abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
Begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
That you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
What up, everybody? So One-on-One is taking care of his kids. Feel free to Instagram him and guilt trip him into showing up late if you feel like it. I'm here with Dr. Longo, a.k.a. Old World Florida, a.k.a. one of the greatest musicians that I just, found out he used to make music. So probably pretty good stuff. And then what else? Oh, yeah. Researcher into Atlantis and Tartaria, trying to find out the truth about the world. And one of the things we're going to try to take a little moment to focus on is East Coast, Florida, that kind of thing, because I think it gets left out a lot. I think Dr. Longo is not leaving it out. He's got a lot to say. But hey, how are you doing? He just muted himself because I'm still ranting. Poor guy.
I'm doing well, Andreas. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Here. Yeah, dude. Glad you're here, man. It's exciting.
Mhm.
So what got you into doing your research originally? I know you started out with music and then you started deciding you had to break into consciousness other ways. What happened?
Well, I was valeting cars too, paying the bills, if so to speak. But
In Florida?
yeah, Palm
Are they
Beach
fancy
Island.
cars? Or are they like nice cars?
Yeah, you'd be amazed. Yeah,
Wow. So
But,
you're like you're like over the hyper materialism because you got to experience it for free. That's cool.
yeah, maybe. I didn't know a thing about cars. Never liked cars, so I didn't have
Okay,
any
yeah.
appreciation for it. But it was good exercise. Rubbing elbows with some interesting people, to say the least.
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess you're not that far from like Trump and all those kinds of people, So
I was pretty much parking all his friends' cars,
I knew I could do it. I was gonna just like make people harass you until you showed up, and not like in a Illuminati like crash into your house kind of way. Just sort of a like we missed you. Good to see you.
You talking to me, bro?
Yeah, I was like, he might not show up. Just bother him and guilt.
Okay. Well, you did it. You did it.
Yeah.
I love you guys.
I'm glad you made it. Well, so we were just talking a bit about the background here for Dr. Longo and like how he was valeting cars and rubbing up against crazy people. I mean, rich people, influential Freemasonic kind of people.
Lizard people.
Yeah, lizards. Go on. So then what happened?
Mm-hmm. That didn't directly lead to my interest in this. I was always, conspiracy minded coming out of high school, and had a couple experiences I've talked about a bunch of times on my channel and Juan's. But basically, I just felt, Tartaria kind of hit in like 2017, I guess. The whole movement, old world chronology, revisionist movement, whatever you want to classify it as. But
Right, yeah. Critically
when
reanalyzing history for the first time since fake news was printed. Yeah, it's a nice thing to do.
Mhm. And when that, sort of floodgate came down and all the information was hitting YouTube and stuff, I couldn't help but notice there was such a void for Florida, considering how it's pretty much the starting place of the United States as we know it.
And every mystical search ever, Ponce de Leon, I mean, we vaguely know, right?
Mhm. Pirates of the Caribbean is half the Pirates of the Caribbean is taking place off the coast of Florida. People don't remember that. But so I just thought, I realized there was such a void no one was filling this space where, and I'll be honest, it was kind of like Tartarian truthers and autodidactic Campbell that really inspired me, because they made such a niche off of Australia, and so many people were tuning in from different places. I was like, well, Florida's got to have as much, if not more, interesting history, and it does, of course. And people have always romanticized Florida with references to Atlantis and stuff like that. The Bahamas has the Atlantis resort, pretty much off the coast of Florida. The Bahamas are Florida, just
Yeah. I mean, Cuba, Haiti, all these places. And if you look back a little further, you can see where they were all land tied. It's not that long ago. And what do we have now in Florida? A bunch of lagoons, and everyone's like, oh, what are they going to call them? Little islands? No, they're part of Florida.
So, I just started getting into that stuff, and I think having a big interest in astrology kind of set me up for success, to be honest, because it just gives you such a leg up with phonetics, mythology, decoding, the singularity of how is this God, that God, but also that God at the same time. That'll tie some people's shoes together. But if you know your astrology, you can always pretty much make it out with a clear, precise understanding.
See, that makes a lot of sense, because you got people interested in astrology and astronomy. So choosing to find Florida, even using the stars, that's kind of what happened, right? So,
well,
there's star maps too here in Florida, right, Narco?
Oh yeah. So if you want to, I guess we can just kick it off talking about Atlantis. Atlantis, what is Atlantis? There's a million different interpretations. There's, of course, with everything that we're going to be talking about, people's first impulse is to say, well, it's all just allegorical. It's all just, you're missing the point. If you're looking for a physical object in any of these legends, you're misled. And there's truth to that. I'm always going to, put the allegorical interpretation where it belongs. But the allegorical interpretation does not negate the literal interpretation.
Right.
Just because Shakespeare wrote plays about King Henry does not mean that all the King Henrys never existed.
Right.
Well, maybe they didn't, but you get what I'm saying. Just because Egypt was referenced in the Bible does not mean Egypt does not exist. Right. So just because these places are named in mythology, such as Atlantis, the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Hesperides, does not mean that there is no physical location for these places. There certainly is, Eden. What is Eden? It's odd and even. It's Adam and Eve. Odd numbers are masculine numbers. Even numbers are feminine. Prime numbers, right? Prime numbers. Adam and Eve combined is Eden, or odd and even. Combine those, that's Eden. Well, it could also be the time when the earth was even. The sun and the moon were even in their path in the sky. And that resulted in a much, much more constant climate and temperate weather, not so many storms or mishaps, right? So there's many interpretations to this. But if there is a tropical physical paradise with lush vegetation, spring water, a fountain of youth, all the qualifications, Florida is at the very tippy top of that list. And that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about, or at least I'm going to be talking about.
It's interesting because and credit where credit's due, because like you said, nobody was covering this recently. But if you go back, you're not the first one to talk about this. You're just bringing back to the point that Ponce de Leon, these people were going to Florida, everyone who had the most educated guess they could make on where they were going to find something. And then isn't it interesting? You have more information than they do now, because you can look at the flora and fauna and the history of alligators and understand the different kinds of vegetation that exist in the lagoons that have been there for 1 million years or whatever. I mean, the Scientologists chose Clearwater. I can think of 1 billion cults though in Florida. Like everybody wanted to go to Florida. The Hollow Earth people, right? The Koresh Tea cult is there too. I mean, Florida comes up a lot, or it did. What happened?
Yep. So you can kind of start right there with why are they drawn to Florida? Now you could start
clearly the alligators and the 120-degree humidity. I mean, everyone loves that, right?
Well, that might be a good place to start right there. Okay. The Garden of Eden. What is the Garden of Eden? It's Earth's most hospitable zone region. Okay?
Vapor canopy. Okay.
Well, yes and no. Florida had giant trees, so we'll get back to that. But what was I just saying?
I'm sorry, I jump around. So Florida, ancient life in Florida.
120-degree weather. 120-degree weather, right? Now you'd probably think
most hospitable, right?
You'd probably think that of the United States, Florida would be very high on the list of hottest states, right? That would be the average person's guess. Well, what if I told you that Florida is not hot? Okay. Believe it or not, Miami, you'd probably put Miami at pretty high on the list for Florida, America's hottest cities. Well, what if I told you that in Miami, it has only ever gone over 100 degrees one time ever on record? That was in 1941 or 1942, and it went over 99 degrees.
Freaking ray guns from the government. That's the only excuse. But so what about North Florida? I mean, isn't it in the swamps or something?
It doesn't count. North Florida's like Alabama, dude. We're
speaking about peninsular Florida.
Where people
peninsular
live.
Florida.
Yeah, people live there and they're not in the swamp. Okay.
But the Panhandle is still very temperate. And by temperate, I don't mean temperate zone. I mean temperate, like it doesn't get very hot. It doesn't get very cold. The entire Gulf of Mexico, the whole entire Gulf Coast, is the most temperate region in the world.
Okay, what about humidity though? The humidity, I was joking about.
Well, if you're not used to humidity,
to breathe there. But I mean, isn't that maybe good for certain kinds of life?
Humidity is a necessity for life to flourish. Okay. You have the highest variation of species where you have the most warmth and humidity. But the beauty of Florida is that it's predominantly subtropical. So you have the best of both worlds. In the full-blown tropics, you would probably never be able to live outside butt naked. Okay. You'd be eaten alive by mosquitoes. Right. Just go watch Discovery Channel and you'll see that. Okay. Florida, however, its temperature, the average, because of the Gulf of Mexico, because of the Gulf Stream, which is the amniotic fluid of the very planet that we live on, okay, oozes from the Gulf Stream. This is why this area is so special. It's not just Florida, it's the Gulf of Mexico, okay? This water is the very stream that would sustain the planet during these periodic cataclysms, especially when the northern hemisphere freezes periodically, which we know it does, okay? The Gulf Stream is the only thing keeping parts of the northern hemisphere alive, right? If you know anything about the Bok Saga places a immense importance on this Gulf Stream.
Right, yeah.
Right.
We were looking at it yesterday, actually, and it's interesting. The Mormons have their stories about the Gulf Stream and just in general, how boats could get from one side of the world to the other side. It's pretty easy when you look at a bottle of plastic litter in the ocean and see how far it can get using the Gulf Stream. It can go from Africa to Florida back to England. It's pretty impressive what the current can force to happen.
Yeah. And that water travels intelligently. It was tracked intelligently. That this stuff doesn't happen by accident.
So do you think that's why like Florida's got life? I mean, like alligators, things that might have survived other places, but they were close enough to. Okay.
Yes. Now, what does Plato? What do the priests say to Solon in Plato's description of Atlantis. They say, due to our flat lack of elevation in a land of rivers, due to the nature of their land, limestone essentially. Giza and Florida are very, very similar. Giza, Florida, and the Baltic, believe it or not,
Right.
the warm parts of the Baltic
Where there be
Sea.
pyramids, yeah.
The Gulf of Finland,
Yeah.
Gulf to Gulf. This is the Gulf Stream.
Oh, and they connect, basically. Yeah.
So I'm in Lake Worth here, that has the highest amount of Finnish people outside of Finland. The most Finnish city in America, Lake Worth.
Because they would have followed the natural current.
And do you know why that is? Why Lake Worth specifically? That is the city where the Gulf Stream comes closest to land.
Of course. So it's not even a plan. It's
now
just
Finnish people bury their dead in bogs. The ancient Finnish people buried their people in bogs. Not the Bok Saga. The Bok Saga, they buried their dead. But traditionally, like these Germanic tribes, Celtic, Nordic tribes would bury their people in bogs.
Wow.
Well, in Florida, the oldest burials in the archaeological record are strawberry blonde Vikings with your European DNA,
right,
that are buried in bogs that are identical to the burials in Finland.
And the Cherokee have legends of this, right? They talk about the tall, wild redheads and blondes that they chased out of zones and areas. Right. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us back to the Phoenicians, because those people, those Vikings, those tall, red hair, maybe blonde haired, but definitely redheaded giants. Giants compared to who? Compared to the 4'11" conquistadors?
Yeah, Dane DeVito versus Muhammad. I see the gradient there.
Or was it compared to the 8-foot Timucua, the Timucua natives of Florida that the Spanish and French ran into? They were 7'9", okay, almost 8 feet tall, and lived to 350 years. I can show you that if you would like to look at it.
Yeah, pull that up. I also have a couple questions while you're pulling that up. Like, so for instance, what do you think about the fur-covered people? Were these fur-covered face giants? I mean, we have like beards versus bald-faced humans. Do you think that there's something to that?
So I don't know much about fur-covered people in Florida other than like skunk ape, which is more like a Bigfoot type creature that I don't necessarily believe in. Unfortunately,
because you are it, bro.
Yeah, bro, this is you. No, I mean, this is the wild.
Can I read something real quick? Going back to the whole, you can survive in the swamp. It's not that hot. There's an excerpt from 1887, an excursion through the Everglades, and he says the word swamp, as we understand it, has no application whatever to the Everglades. That it is a country of pure water. That this water is moving in one direction or another depending on the natural topography of the country, and that the air is wholesome and pure, free from disease, germs, that near the coast and mangroves the mosquitoes thrive, but deep in the Everglades, in the wintertime at least, you can sleep comfortably without a net. That was 1887.
Yep.
Willoughby. Yeah, go ahead.
Because that's most. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Most NPCs will say, "Oh, Florida is just a mosquito paradise. You could never live there." Prior to mosquito control.
I imagine that Earth is a mosquito like preservation. I don't think they lied about that on Lilo and Stitch. But if you look at these pictures from the Renaissance, right? And this is like Mary Magdalene, for instance. You look up the Harry Mary. It's actually really easy to type in Harry Mary, and I don't even think you need safe search on, but just in case. But like, it's always this furry Harry Mary Renaissance. Let me. Boom, bam. Look at this stuff. Always covered in fur. Bigfoot. Mother Mary is Bigfoot, according to the Renaissance. Covered in fur. And then so are dudes. And then here's the other part. So they dye their skin green, get the wild green man. And they've got littler guys. Like, look at the height of this guy and look how small this guy is, right? So it's interesting because you've got like the giants. I don't know. I mean, it's not that weird considering you were just talking about giants, but to me, it's shocking.
And we just finished doing a dwarf episode, the dwarf people of Florida.
Solidarity with the Iridian dwarves. I'm glad you did that.
And the homunculus here in Florida. It's very interesting. I think there's a lot of the history is rich, And I mean it like how Narco was saying, a lot of NPCs will say, "Oh, it's just too hot" or whatever. It's mosquito ridden. But this is an 1887 dude saying, "Hey, we can sleep outside without a net, bro." So imagine that 1887. Can you imagine the last frontier? That's what Florida was, and they're
beautiful.
sleeping outside.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened? Why? Oh, good.
I forgot. What did I say I was going to pull up?
You were going to pull up proof of the 350-year-old giants in Florida.
Oh,
Timucua.
Timucua.
Thank you. Okay.
See,
I'm ready. I'm ready to share.
Oh, yeah. Just share, and then I'll let your screen in there. Boom. Bam. Done. Hey, look at us. I love the feedback loop.
All right. You see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a French account of the Timucua when they landed on the northeast coast of Florida, parts of South Carolina too, same culture. Land of the Crescent, as we're going to get to. The Gulf of Mexico is the true cradle of civilization, the Fertile Crescent, but we'll get into that. Blah, blah, blah. So you can read here. You guys can see that good?
Do the picture and then do the words. Make it as wide as you can. Double
Okay.
it. There you go.
Okay. So
Just in case.
these are the Timucua. This is them preparing for a feast. Those girls have some pretty long hair. We were just looking at hair.
Mm-hmm. And cool hats too.
Baby got a map too,
Preparations
baby.
for a feast. Okay. However, although they hold great feasts in their own way, yet they are temperate in their eating, as a result of which they live for a long time. For one of their chiefs assured me that he was 300 years old, and that his father, whom he showed me, was 50 years older than he. And I can truly say that when I saw him, I thought I was looking at no more than human bones covered with skin. They certainly put Christians to shame who reduced their lifespan by holding immoderate feasts and drinking parties.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
They used to do fasting, and Christians used to have fasts that became break fasts, that became feasts, and then we started dying of cancer. And then look at these guys living 350 years.
And they used to swap blood, by the way. They used to do transfusions of blood from one another.
What?
So
All of a sudden, you took this to a Rolling Stone place I didn't expect. So they're
no,
vampires?
I'm serious.
They did blood transfusions, or
they
like
did.
medical?
Yeah, I'll pull up the information, but they did blood transfusions, so they would swap each other's bloods.
To be fair, I'm not that surprised. Like, you look at like Mayans and Aztecs, they have drills in the skulls. They have all kinds of advanced medicine.
They're worshiping a monolith there, dude. They're worshiping that and a stuffed deer too,
with a fleur de lis on it. So these were Huguenots who came French.
I'm telling you, bro, the Arcadians have been burnt away from the Florida story.
There's
like all these
multiple
myths about it, but
there's multiple Arcadias in Florida. There's an Arcadia city and many neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
The word
Arcadia,
and you know this obviously, but the word Cajun is a contraction of Arcadian, and so a lot of
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a fun link. Yeah, that's a secret there.
Well, we're gonna get into the Crescent, and New Orleans is the Crescent City, right? The city of the
oh
Crescent.
My God! All right, keep going. I never thought about the moon and the Muslims and the connection to the Ladinos with it.
Oh, I'm gonna blow your mind.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. The Chief Athor is an extremely handsome man, intelligent, reliable, strong, of exceptional height, exceeding our tallest man by 1.5 feet. Now, I found out that their tallest man on this French expedition was about 6'3". Okay, so
all right,
that puts this guy at about 7'9", almost 8 feet tall.
Fits the profile.
And this little tidbit at the end. Close your ears, guys. He married his mother, and by her raised more children of both sexes.
Are you reading from the Box Saga all of a sudden?
What the fuck?
Oh, sorry. I mean to hit that.
That is very a Box Saga, though. I don't know. Keep going.
So also just think about, for those who know their astrology, or who want some astrology, or even if people considering this story to be fake, this would be the place that I would start looking, is that this chief, the primary king, his name is Athor. Well, that's Thor, that's Arthur, that's Jupiter. Okay, that's Thor. His father's name is Saturiwa. That's Saturn. Thor's father was Saturn.
Right.
Jupiter's father was Saturn, or whatever
Jupiter's Zeus,
mythology you want to use. Yeah, Zeus,
right.
Kronos, whatever.
Right.
But you get where I'm going with that.
That's pretty good. That's not bad at all. I mean, so I don't know if you've seen some of Ari's videos on the Saturn in the sky, equal size with the moon and the sun, and the time period that shifts. Do you have thoughts on like a kind of I mean, a lot of time we talk about the reset being Tartarian volcano power plants shutting down. Do you think though that the comet in the sky and all that stuff, Tecumseh's black sun disk, all that stuff, do you think that there's what's that transition about?
There's events that pop up. There's, phenomena. There's always been the sun, and there's always been the moon, and there always will be. The sun's not going anywhere. The moon's not going anywhere. The moon's not a broken off piece of the earth. That's masculine and feminine you're looking at. So as long as masculine and feminine are still principles, you will have a moon in the sky and a sun in the sky.
But then, so the astronomical story of Theia and Earth colliding is the rib being pulled out. Oh man, I'm a sucker for metaphor. That's pretty brutal that they did that with science.
Mm-hmm. Now the moon might have gotten beaten up a little bit, because it does look like it's been beaten up a little bit. But the moon is actually selenite, believe it or not. Selenite.
I get a monatomic shale that has selenite in it, and apparently it's really good for you. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, Saturn in the sky, brimstone is what melted like sulfur, essentially. Saturn rules sulfur, so there's your Saturn in the sky, the devil, the Lord raining brimstone.
What do you think
I'm sure there are events that trigger things like that, and you would see something in the sky that is Saturn's doing. But
you don't think Saturn was the same size as the moon and the sun?
No, that's ridiculous. That's folly. And the Ptolemaic worldview is the map of the universe. It's not an age. The sun and the moon have always been here, and they always will be. As to whether one maybe got sped up, maybe someone twisted the hand on that clock a little too quick, and the moon started speeding up faster than the sun, and they might have both been equal, because they're equal size. They're exact equal size. Their mean size of the sun and moon, from our perspective, regardless of what model you're on, geocentric, heliocentric, are the same exact size. So that should be discomforting to everyone with a brain, that the sun and the moon are the exact same size from our perspective, no matter what model you're on.
NASA wouldn't lie to me though, Narco. Don't say that, dude.
But if you teach a kid young enough to believe Santa Claus, and then you take away Santa Claus from them, and if you teach them that the heliocentric model is real, and then you take away Santa Claus, you see where I'm going with this? Like, we can save a lot of kids. I think it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to save kids from Santa, you're saving them from Saturn, because Santa actually is Saturn. Santa is Satan.
Elaborate on this, because I think, some people have been like, Santa's not Satan. And I hear that and all, because Satan is kind of Phosphorus and Venus, but Saturn.
Well, Christmas comes from Saturnalia, which is the
Let's get into the
Saturn.
Saturn aspect of Santa Claus.
So Saturn is Santa. Santa is Satan, without a doubt. And I'll tell you why. Santa doesn't belong in the Christian cosmology, right? Santa is a heretical icon, essentially.
Saint Nicholas is like Moses. I give you toys. All right.
Well, Saint Nicholas is something else, because there's so many candidates for who this Jesus guy was, but the Jesus myth remains the same. So the Santa archetype is the grandfather, the stepfather, the old man Saturn, old man Kronos, at the North Pole where the sun does not shine.
Presents before New Year's, yeah.
So, and of course he represents Capricorn, where Saturn rules Capricorn. So this is, and hell is winter. Winter is hell. Okay, invierno is how you say winter in Latin. Infierno is how you say hell in Latin. So those
I love
are the
a man who
word.
Speaks multiple languages.
Hell froze over.
Right? Gets me in my Catholic schoolboy. All right.
What were we talking about?
Saturn, Infierno, Invierno.
Santa is Saturn, and I'll tell you why.
Hell is frozen over. Go ahead.
Jesus would never punish you. You could kick Jesus in the face, and he would forgive you immediately. Okay? Santa,
Yeah, but
however, is keeping tabs on everything you are doing,
judging.
and
Yeah.
he will karmically, you know, he'll get you back for everything you do. He's such a motherfucker. He will put coal in your stockings.
Which is usually the most valuable thing during the wintertime. But okay.
Saturn rules coal, astrologically, alchemically. Saturn.
Oh
rules
yes,
coal.
and the diamonds. Okay.
Isn't
All
that alchemical though, right? With the coal, and then it kind of leads into the locomotive because they use coal to power it and the burning.
What's a
And
stocking?
and carbon and Saturn.
What's a stocking? It's a sock, right? But why is it different than a sock? Where does it go up to? Instead of your ankle, where does it go up to?
The fireplace.
Your knee.
Oh, okay.
Capricorn rules the knees, the kneecaps.
Oh, that's
Capricorn, Saturn.
Oof.
Okay.
Saturn is the whatever. We're talking about Florida. Florida is all about Pisces and Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune is the god of Atlantis, Poseidon, right?
We had the Celestial Railroad too, right? And there was a Mars, Florida. There's a Jupiter, Florida. There was a Venus, Florida. So these guys, they're trying to do it like a sort of projection. The guys who founded Florida, a lot of people say that they're not occultists, but I 100% think that they were onto some alchemical, trying to transmute literally the ages from one thing to the next, and with all these buildings.
16 taxpayers that are not occultists, and they don't interfere with too much of our society. Do you want to show us the Confederate flag of the Muskogee Nation? I'll pull it up for you really quickly. You posted this. Talk about it.
Okay. I actually did not know this existed until
freaking what?
Until this morning, and that's coming from me, who has spent almost the last 6 months diving deep into Seminole history, Muskogee Creek, Miccosukee. Those are all
Who knew the native tribes of America were Muslim? I had no idea. This is amazing.
Well, right there in the name you have Muskogee. Muz is the same phonetic root as Muslim, okay? And Muskogee, the Muskogee, they actually sided with Mexico, with Montezuma. So they were over here in Oklahoma and Arkansas, right, and North Florida. And when Montezuma needed aid, they supported Montezuma. Now, how does Mexico fit in? Mexico, well, let's zoom out a little bit. The Gulf of Mexico is the Fertile Crescent. There is one fertile crescent on this good earth. One only. That is both crescent-shaped and fertile. Mesopotamia in the Middle East is neither fertile at all whatsoever. It's arid. There's no spring water whatsoever. Okay. Very, very little.
It's kind of like the Holy Roman Empire, neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. I get your whole vibe. This is a lot more lively.
The Gulf of Mexico is the perfect crescent, which you see iconicized in the emblem of Islam. Okay.
Yeah.
Islam is the fertile crescent, the crescent moon with the star. Okay. Now,
moon that controls the tides.
Now I'm telling you, Mesopotamia is Mexopotamia. Okay. And you'll notice that both of these Mexican Americans are referred to as Mesoamericans or South Mesoamericans. So this is the same root word, and they'll tell you that it just means middle, right? Like middle American or middle,
Very suspicious, yes.
This is Mexopotamia. And from Mexico, we get Olmec. Well, Mecca comes from Olmec in Mexico. So the original Mecca was in the Gulf of Mexico. And what is Mecca? It has the Kaaba, the cube. Well, what's the cube? The Kaaba? It is Cuba, the land of the cube.
Dude, that's amazing. You're getting me here. I love it.
Okay. And we're just using like biblical terminology. Well, you can go to the Greek and see, like you're talking about before, you have New Smyrna, Florida. You have Arcadia, Florida. Well, we can look at.
Dude, there's a reason why they took Florida, they took Cuba from Florida, and like it's such an amazing thing to think about. Like Cuba, George Bush, the Bay of Pigs, the Knights of the Golden Circle, how they wanted to destroy America and have a new capital out of Cuba that was going to be centered from Florida. The new, and they wanted to guess what they wanted to call it? New Atlantis, of course.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Cuba's also where the Muskogee and Seminoles escaped to. The last surviving native Floridians escaped to Cuba. Officially, that's the official story.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what you have is Florida's.
This was going to be their empire. They wanted this to be like Floridian or Floridia land or something.
Yeah. So people have heard the Nile is the Mississippi, right? And that's almost definitely true. If at least it's an equal equivalent to the Nile, right? I think too many people are in denial over this. But
nice Disney World joke from the Jungle Cruise. I like it.
So, what is Mesopotamia? It's Iraq, Syria, a little bit of Turkey, a little bit of Jordan. Well, from Iraq, you get the words Iroquois. You even get Cherokee from Iraq because it's Cherokee. Right. This is like an Arabic prefix. Cherokee, like Hanukkah, right? So Iroquois, Cherokee, Eric, all the Vikings, multiple Vikings came to America named Eric. So yeah, not only do you have Amerigo Vespucci, you have what was his name? Leif Erikson, who came to America, I believe. I could be wrong.
Right, in 1066, ended up in Canada. Likely, they have the Kensington rune stone in Alexandria. Right.
Oh yeah, so runic is Punic, and that's going to bring us back to Atlantis as well. Runic is Punic. This is the #1 secret that they will not allow to be uttered in
P's and R's. You know what's great is that the Cyrillic P is an R, right? Chi-Rho, right? R Cyrillic.
Yeah. Well, you can even search. If you search runic Punic, people have pointed this out. It's undeniable.
You couldn't deny it, but here's an example. The P is in R in Russian. So of course, half of all of Eurasia is looking at the P is in R. So there's no way you're wrong.
Exactly. And Phoenician is Finnish. I have not heard a single person saying that on YouTube. I've been screaming it from every rooftop I can. Finnish is Phoenician. The only person who knew this was J.R.R. Tolkien, and he was so frustrated that no one would listen to him that he wrote the most magnificent epic fantasy the world has ever seen. Because he knew, if you know the wellspring of language, right? And what's the wellspring of language? It's Welsh. And he'll tell you that flat out. Well, it's Welsh and Finnish, primarily Finnish.
Yeah.
Finnish and Welsh and Irish are these mystery languages that people don't know where they came from, right? And Basque too.
But they've found a lot of things like Basque is connected to the Japanese, has similar grammar. The connections in Finnish has 17 to 24 cases, which if you're looking for somebody who studied language and sounds, the Phoenicians would be the likeliest character to do that.
Yes. And we're talking about the Creek natives a little bit. The Creek are the Greek. Creek natives are the Greek. Okay? They also go by the Miccosukee or Seminole. Seminole is Semitic. These are Semitic people. Just look at them. I have some really, really good pictures if you want to see some really Semitic looking ones.
If you have anything, pull it up. I'm just looking around in the meantime. Yeah. I mean, definitely, though, there's so many amazing examples. The Algonquin have Welsh in some of their language. What's the other one? The Krakatoan, the Croatoan. The Croatoan have Welsh in their language. And then the connections between Welsh and Ugaritic Tamil, which I'm hoping to have Sabri and Govinda, these two Tamil friends of mine, do a thing talking about just the linguistic connections, because nobody thinks that Welsh is connected to an Eastern European language, and that's how they hide it. Like, they just figure, don't double check, I guess.
Well, Welsh is the wellspring of many. That's in the word. Welsh is the wellspring of language.
Is this guy wearing a fez right now?
That's a fez on a Native American, quote unquote Native American. Look at some other
And very
guys.
similar. But the thing is that fez also reminded me of the Hebrew hat, the big weird square.
Yes. Yeah, these guys look like they could be in Brooklyn with their Semitic hats. Well, they're Seminoles. It's just a different suffix. Same root
Right.
word, same prefix, different suffix. Those are some turbans and fezzes. These are Native Americans. This is extraordinary. And see, that's a Creek chief. We see those gorgets on his neck. That's a Celtic thing, largely, not just Celtic, but it's at the forefront of like Scottish dress, where the kilts and stuff. They'll have their gorgets. Those are the things down by their neck, and the gorgets are. Well, we're going to get to the gorgets when we talk about the crescent. We're going to look at some crescent flags.
Dude, just
these
two,
guys,
just 2 seconds, because you're just blowing my mind too fast. So first off, we've seen this hat, and you can see the connection. Obviously, it's that kind of hat, and the connection to the Kaba stone, right? Because there's another kind of that hat, which is this little tiny freaking Kaba stone. So that's back to your Cuba.
Yep.
And then the other one was this: is if you go to the Wikipedia page for Jewish hat, there's actually a kind of hat called the Jewish hat, and it is literally, you had a picture earlier of these guys wearing these weird hats. I forget the 7'9" Floridians. Like the ladies had long hair and the guys had hats just like this. But this is one of the old Jewish hats that's basically lost. And if you look into Tartarians, you start to see that hat everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's similar to the Phrygian cap, kind of.
Right.
This guy's wearing a Phrygian cap a little bit.
There you go. The Phrygian cap's on all the flags, too, of any of the Mason states that they like left Spain or Napoleon. They put a Phrygian cap on everything.
So if you know how Arabic culture, even how this guy's reclining right here is a dead giveaway of Arabic culture.
Right.
Reclining to the side like that inside a tent, you know.
The Romans like to rip that off too.
Yeah, this is Billy Bowlegs, one of the oldest. He was probably about 95 in this picture. The Seminoles, just so you guys know, the Seminoles average 6'4", okay, and 95 years old is the average life expectancy of a Seminole in early Florida, right up until the 1960s. Okay. Now the women, a lot of times with the women, you'll see they'll have a lot more of the like sub-Saharan African genes, or maybe even like Chilean, like Inca genes. But with the neck stretching there, that's definite African influence.
So clear trading was going on before the Columbus triangular trade, right?
Mm-hmm. This guy, he's up to no good.
Well, he doesn't have his hand in his pocket. There's no hidden hand. I mean,
he's like Ricky Bobby. He was like, "What do I do with my hands?" And
but I see that Peruvian. We might be doing sign language, but I see that Peruvian style hat too. That's kind of
you want to know another huge connection that I know you're gonna have fun with, Andreas? Is the Seminoles had some of the most blue and purple dye in the world. Okay. Now, if you know about
royal, so they're very royal people.
Yes, exactly. They were one of the 5 civilized tribes, by the way, and the 5 civilized tribes were regarded as equal, if not superior, to European culture. Why? Because they adapted the technology as soon as they were introduced to it.
There's more to that word, right? When you say civilized, what you're saying is non-barbaric. What you're saying is connected to the empire. You're saying, and maybe not Roman, but it's something. It's like Hellenistic or something. It might be even deeper seed, like you're saying the Seminoles and the Semitic. It might be that they're civilized because they're Semitic.
Yes, for sure.
You're not wrong, dude. I can see it right in the word.
Phonetics is everything. People are just afraid to make the leaps because they've never done it before. They're afraid to make the leaps between words. They think they'll be ridiculed or that it'll sound silly. It's like child's play, you know, mishmatching words just for fun, but it's actually
AKA magic spelling.
It's actually exactly the science of light, you know, runic, and is right up there with Hebrew as far as, you know, it's like, how do I phrase
sigil
this?
magic.
Sigil magic, yeah. Light. It's the science of light and how light refracts. You can the runes in the ancient Hebrew alphabet. The ancient Hebrew alphabet comes from the runes, not the other way around. Okay, and English is the oldest language on the planet, and you can verify this how. Well, it's the perfect intersection point between the two oldest alphabets in the world that we are told are allegedly completely unrelated. The Phoenician alphabet, and the runic alphabet. Okay. Those are older than Sanskrit, by the way, guys. Sanskrit came from the northwest, not the other way around.
And was written down thousands of years after it was spoken, so we have no idea. Even it's like
it was brought in by people. Yeah, it was brought in by people who had horses. So if the horse wasn't introduced till however long ago, sorry to burst your bubble, but here, hang on, I'm trying to stop. Okay, there we go.
I mean, that's incredible, though. You think about the Tamil and also how the Tamil have been subjugated by the Indo-Aryans, and the idea that their language is far older. And the connections in the Tamil-Ugaric to Finnish. There's certainly a bunch of messing around with language. I'm curious what you think of when you say English is the oldest language. Do you mean because Shakespearean English, doesn't that?
Yes, sure. No, so English does not belong to England. That's a very recent feat. Okay, that only happened.
All the signs are in the old language still. You try to go to read Greenwich and tell me what it says. They don't know how to speak English in England. Not well.
Exactly. So English is not an actual language, and many languages fall into that category today, even German, where they were recently standardized, sometimes only, 50 years ago. Usually
descriptive design, yeah.
Usually as a logistical necessity, because they're like, hey, we're going to war with and now you're in the army, so you need to speak the same as everyone else. That's usually how these standardized languages come to be. And the Volkssprech becomes,
lower class.
Exactly. So English was not standardized until, I guess we're going to go down a Shakespeare rabbit hole here. I love Shakespeare.
Or whoever he is.
Exactly. So John Dee was tasked by Queen Elizabeth with standardizing the English language. Okay. Remember, he was interested, him and Francis Bacon were, in the beginnings of the English Empire. England was not even a country at this point. It was a Viking outpost, essentially, right? It was contended land between Vikings, Danes, God knows who else, Spanish armadas.
It was like India when Alexander the Great got there. A lot of little kingdoms and chieftains, yeah.
So, you have the Black Irish too. Who are they? We don't know. Are they the bastards of a Spanish armada, or are they a pygmy race of dark-skinned people?
Picts. Hopefully they're the Picts, let's hope. We don't know.
Picts too, yeah. Where do pixies come from? Picts. Yep. Where do fairies come from? The fair-haired people. Where do the elves come from? The Elvins, the Finns, the Elven. And Finnegan is Phoenician. Finnegan's Wake.
Oh yeah,
it's the wake of the Phoenicians who.
But you've got John Dee, Cecil Rhodes though, and then De Vere. Are they involved, or how's this going with the Queen's plan?
Now people like to argue about who Shakespeare really was, but it started with John Dee for sure. It started with John Dee.
The numbers prove it. 1742, right?
Yeah, John Dee kicked off that mission, the mission that was Shakespeare, and the mission was this. Queen Elizabeth needed the English language standardized, and the English religion standardized. So a group of scholars in England came together, and this is official, and started standardizing the English language. They were looking at Old English poetry, Welsh poetry, everything that was getting mixed into England, and they were synthesizing it into something that was beautiful and had the possibility of being a language that could rival the French, which had just been standardized in a similar process.
Very few French spoke French up until they standardized it.
Exactly. So the English nobility was speaking better French than the French were at that time. During the King Henrys, were all speaking French for the most part, and the English commoners were either speaking Dutch, Welsh, Viking, God knows what Viking tongue, and they were all Germanic. So
Cornish, Anglo-Frisian, yeah, right. The Anglo-Frisian made it for a while. Yeah. I'm surprised. Good job. Exactly. Best runner-up for England's language.
So how does England come out of this being the oldest language if we're talking about how it was created? Well, because phonetics does not belong to
Right.
Phoenicia.
It's freaking
Phonetics-
Swahili. It's a yeah.
Phonetics is an approach to written language. Okay, so written language was not invented with the Phoenicians, but phonetic language was, where you have one syllable or one sound equals one letter for the most part. The advent of that writing style, okay, coincided with the advent of agriculture, religion, organized religion, not in the bad sense, but mythology, this syncretic mythology that all the world shares.
Cosmogony, yeah.
Pyramid building, agriculture, domesticated animal, and written
Math,
language
algebra.
all came out of the North Pole at the same time after the recent ice age. Atlantis was the outpost of this Arctic people that encompassed much of North America, and their capital seaport was Tampa Bay, Florida, because
Wow.
that's where the Gulf Stream lands from the North Pole. It goes from the North
Free
Pole.
energy, follow the stream. Right.
Right. So how is English the oldest language? It's because it is the intersection point between Phoenician and Runic, which we are told are officially completely unrelated. Right. And yes,
But-
I am drawing from the Bach saga in this.
No, it's awesome. We love the Bach
But,
saga. But it's interesting because you think about the idea that sorry, you were gonna say.
No, it's okay. Keep going.
Well, just the idea that that the ancient so English is an idea, and the language, it doesn't look whatever words you want to use. I could be in California and I could say like sayonara amigo, which is like Japanese and Spanish in an English grammar. So that English grammar, this is a trade language, the Swahili of the world, and it is clearly ancient, and it's so flexible that people can change all the words and it can still be the same language. That is a fact, and it's amazing.
English is the modern Phoenician. Phoenician was the standardized. The Phoenicians did not even speak Phoenician at home. It's starting to seem like, because they have no written history whatsoever. And you could say, well, the Romans and Greeks destroyed it all. They aren't that good at destroying stuff. Okay.
Right.
There's no Phoenician history, just like there's no Irish history. You get 10 kings and then it cuts off, and there's no Irish history whatsoever. Okay. There's no Basque history. All you have is their local mythologies that they cling to as the churches try and genocide them off the face of the earth.
Where does King James fall into all this? Because we're talking about Elizabeth, John D, and then you have the push for the King James version of the Bible, and you have the connection there with Francis Bacon, supposedly being the editor. Was that a psyop of some sorts? Because I think that language is at the core of a lot of things, and we're talking about adopting it as the not one world religion, but one world language. Almost like if you look at the original alphabet, it was only 17, 19 letters, and now they added all these sigils and glyphs and symbols to it, almost to demystify it in some sort of way. And then people are saying in the chat, hey, it doesn't make any sense sometimes, the sounds of the letters put together. It says, in one way it's this sound, but then you add one more thing and it completely changes it around. So it's like paradoxical in a way. But where does King James fall into this whole thing in the King James Bible?
So King James works into this because King James succeeded Queen Elizabeth I. Now, Elizabeth I put into motion this mission to standardize the English language. And that was being done with John Dee and a group of scholars who were overtly working on standardizing the English language. But from that gathering of people, interesting scholars, poets, getting together and standardizing that language, she also tasked them with using that standardized language to print the Bible in the English language for the very first time. So the King James Version Bible almost was the Queen Elizabeth Version Bible. Okay, that's how it was supposed to be. And it was going to be a lot more trippy. Okay, I can guarantee that, because she was down with the astrology. She was down with
the fairy queen. Yeah, she was down with the occult.
And she willingly ended the. She knew she was descended from a rotten family, and she willingly ended her bloodline. And you could say she might have had a bastard or two, and might have hid some babies.
A homunculus or two, if you will.
They made sure that if De Vere was her bastard, they made sure he did not become king. And so there's any example where Cecil Rhodes was very quick to get rid of anybody who could have been prayer.
So it started with this mission, and as they were coming up with the King James Version Bible, which took probably at least 2 decades to finalize. As that was going on, you had them saying, "Well, this is pretty damn fun, and there's a lot more that we want to tell than what we're allowed to put in the King James Version Bible." So that's where Shakespeare comes into play. Shakespeare was like the outlet for the more playful, more dirty, more comedic,
accessible,
and the poetic parts that wouldn't make the cut into the Bible, but would give them all this flexibility to weave all this, poetic nuance into it that they could only kind of squeeze in very stiffly into the King James Version Bible. So King James Version Bible and William Shakespeare's complete works were being created largely at the same time by the same group of people for the same purpose: to standardize the English language for religious means with the printing of the Bible, but also socially, like pop culture of the day. They wanted to work at it from that angle too. So that's where Shakespeare came into it, right? And we could do a whole nother talk on Shakespeare, I'm sure. But this all relates because, to bring it back to the English, they were trying to fix English. English does not belong to England.
right?
That's a new thing. Okay, that's a new thing. England is Anglish, angular writing. All you're saying when you're saying Anglo or Anglish is angular, which is also runic, because runes are hard angles. This is a language, a text system
Built
that
on
is using
degrees.
hard angles. You go over to Islam, or Arab, the Middle East, and you see how they write their script. It's all flowy and feminine, and it's script, and there's no hard angles.
Except for Kufic, right? So the original version of Arabic was like this, and
Yes.
all hard angles. So
Well, that's not a phonetic language. That's pictorial, or whatever you'd call it, hieroglyphic.
This is Arabic. This is Arabic language. Kufic is just the original way they wrote the script. It's a phonetic.
Okay.
It is a phonetic. So eventually they started in Spain getting more swimmy, and in Persians that were Ladino. But for instance, this says Allah, Allah, Allah. Muhammad says Ali, 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 and Muhammad, 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 right? 4 times in a spiral. So there is kind of an art to it, but it is phonetic.
You did a video on this in like QR codes, right? How QR and QFIC are very similar, right?
I think that so Ewing Jr. thinks they're connected. I think they could be. I'm always open to it's possible someone accidentally made a QR code look exactly like ancient Kufic. I mean, it's possible. I'm open-minded, but yeah, that's pretty dang on the nose, right?
So English, when we're saying it's the oldest language, all you're saying is that it's the modern Phoenician, and Phoenician is the oldest alphabetic language, right? Phonetic language. And thousands of years ago, you could go to any port in the known world and someone would be speaking Phoenician, any trade center in the world. Well, you go to any center of trade in the world today, and they're largely going to be speaking English. And that's because it is the most bare bones, easy to learn, pick up phonetic language that there is.
I go, we go, you go, right?
So even Dutch fit this bill at the time when the Dutch Navy ruled the world. So, it's the same deal. The English Navy ruled the world, and now it's pretty much American English that dominates the financial world.
But you're thinking the Phoenicians didn't necessarily speak this language in their home. It could have been just a trade language developed. You think like Esperanto or something?
Yes. They could roll up to any foreign land, and teach anyone with a high enough IQ Phoenician on the spot, and they could even teach them, sentences within a matter of hours. I'm confident of this because it's so simple. And how Finnish ties into this, because Juan, you said there's all these inconsistencies with English, right? How why is the k sound sometimes a c, sometimes a k, sometimes a ck, sometimes a q?
It's one of the hardest languages to learn.
Finnish rectifies that, and it's usually a root Finnish where no one syllable has more than one letter attributed to it, and that's what makes Finnish very, very special. Is that one letter equals one sound. So Finnish is the most phonetic language in the world. So that tells you right there. If you've ever seen a Finnish figurine, ancient Finnish figurine, and an ancient Phoenician figurine, they're the same, exact same. A Finnish boat, a Viking boat, is a Phoenician boat. Same sails, same everything. They're both dragon boats, have dragons on their sterns. So Phoenician was an order. You know, shout out to Ben from Waking Up with Analog. You know, he really introduced me to that. Phoenician was an order, and it was a brotherhood. So I kind of knew that. What he taught me was about the order of the Q, right? The Q. And this ties back into Cuba because these ancient mariners were definitely coming to the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is probably the best kept secret on the planet. Now I'd like to show you some. I said earlier it's the Fertile Crescent. The Gulf of Mexico is the Fertile Crescent, right? Well, I'm gonna prove that to you guys right now. And it's Monday right now. So Monday, what a great day.
Moon days are fun.
The crescent moon.
Close to Mars Day though. We're almost there. That's fun for me. And in English, they like kind of confuse you because you've got Tuesday and Wednesday instead of Mars Day and Miércoles, Mercury Day. I mean,
yeah,
everyone else knows what's going on.
We're naming days of the week of gods from other religions. You know,
What's
like
the
yeah,
same?
not even all the same religion. Thor and Freya. Okay, we're getting kind of weird. Next to Saturn, I see what's going on here.
Yeah. It's like a chimera that they're trying to form.
I got lost.
Like a homunculus.
Not all who wander are lost.
Okay, here's Alabama. So all al words are Arabic. Alabama.
Habam.
Habama.
Habam.
Okay. This is also Alhambra. Alhambra, right?
Whoa.
This is a Confederate flag of Alabama right here with the serpent and the crescent moon on it with, what is that, 7? What is that, the Pleiades? So also more Taurus, Venus.
Don't tread on me. Is that what that's all about?
Probably.
Yeah, definitely. The George Washington and the cherry tree, the Morocco flag. You know all this, right? George Washington was clearly a Moor.
So exactly, that looks like a Moroccan flag, Alabama,
right. With the green even and the stars around it. I don't know if we saw the fine print of stars around that star.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
Someone said Arab is a town in Alabama. Is that true?
Yes. Oh yes. There's also I mean, you could, if you want to include the Greek, that's a whole nother video. You have Alexandria, Athens, Memphis, Cairo, Arcadia, Haiti. Haiti is Hades. New Smyrna, Naples. The list goes on and on and on. Tallahassee is Tallahassee. Allah.
Right.
All right, let's look at some more of these.
Mobile, Alabama used to be called Mobilla, which was the Choctaw name.
It's Mobilla, which is Alabama backwards. Yeah, Mobilla.
Yeah.
Arkansas. I didn't get enough. Arkansas is the Ark, by the way, floating down the Mississippi River.
Oh, interesting.
Crescent City, Florida.
A lot of redheads and giants in Arkansas.
So the Gulf of Mexico is the Fertile Crescent, and the Fertile
Is that still around today, Narco? Crescent City?
Yes.
I've never heard about that before.
You ready for a good one?
Whoa.
I don't know. It might just be like a town. It might not be like a full-blown city. But yes, Crescent City, Florida.
Whoa.
Well, there's a couple other Crescent cities along the Gulf of Mexico. So now, wait, you guys are gonna. This next picture is gonna blow your mind. Crescent Moon brand. So this is a Florida orange juice brand. More juice. They're calling orange juice more juice.
No way.
Crescent City Fruit Co. Crescent City, Florida. More
That's
juice.
Kind of in your face.
Okay. Now let's go look at.
I mean, the Masons, you have the Shriners, and Louisiana, of course, you have a lot of connections to like Nation of Islam, But none of this stuff is from the 60s. Well, it is, but it's from the 1860s, 1760s. This isn't from recent enough time to be anything else.
So this is New Orleans. New Orleans was known as the Crescent City, right? There's the Fleur-de-Lis, Florida. Here are old sewer lids, sewer caps.
How many stars is that? 7 stars?
Is that the Pleiades again?
Yep.
It should be.
7 stars.
3 on the right, on the east, and then 5 on the west, or whatever, or 4
An
on the
old
west.
cast iron water meter cover. And I've got more.
Two dudes in Florida haggling over some flocka.
This is South Carolina, of course. And South Carolina actually was part of old Florida. Florida extended up to South Carolina and over to Texas pretty much.
Florida included, so Florida and Louisiana, right? So the part of, Florida. But part of the Louisiana territories. So there were trappers and traders that were going to like Minnesota and back to Florida. It was a pretty huge nomadic thing, supposedly.
Yeah.
And Narco, is there any of this symbolism other than obviously the fleur-de-lis on the Bach Tower? Because obviously these were guys that were in the know of all these things. Is there? I know the fleur-de-lis. You have Neptune on there. You have a whole bunch of weird symbolism. I know we talked about plant last night.
The fleur-de-lis is the B, right? So it's the symbol of the Sirius B as opposed to Sirius A.
That's funny.
Nice.
Never.
If
you ever look at the original fleur-de-lis pictures, like the ancient, let me see if I can find.
It's a B. Yeah, I hadn't heard the Sirius B part though.
Oh right, yeah.
That's interesting. So to answer your question, Juan, we don't see that specifically, but in Tampa. Wait, what did you ask? Sorry.
I said if there's any symbolism of the crescent. I know we have the Neptune and all that on the Bach Tower.
So not the Bach Tower.
Is that a picture of garlic? I'm just kidding.
Not the Bach Tower, but this is Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay hotel that we were just talking about yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bunch of videos on.
Dude, every single thing you're showing me right now is Alibaba. You're showing me like Jafar's palace.
Yeah, dude.
This is Tampa Bay, Florida.
Can I just get back for 1 second? Let me look at that. Not the garlic, the newer one. The next one. One more forward. The one that has Yakum and Boaz pillars underneath it. Like a rocket ship. Okay, I feel better. All right. That's it. The two pillars underneath it's supported by 2 pillars is all.
Mm-hmm. That's the Bank of Tampa.
And here's your Jolly Rouge.
So Tampa's the Buccaneers, and what are pirate swords? Pirate swords are always scimitars. They're never Western European.
That's a saber, no?
Well, it's a Arabic, like what's it called? Who's the guy in the sea? The Sinbad in the 7 Seas. He has
the saber.
Yeah, but also the red flag. So the skull and crossbones. Pirates didn't use skull and crossbones, obviously, because what would you do? Announce, "Hey guys, we're coming to rob your ship. Check out my flag." They're gonna use a fake flag and come up to you. The pirates' flag that we're used to was actually the banking ship's flag.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Jolly Roger used to be rouge, which was why the red skull. Yeah, and that's connected to the Dutch.
And the Roos Vikings.
Yeah, the red to orange though is you can see how that's a fun switch. All right.
So, right now, you guys can still see my screen?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at the Golden Crescent. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know how much Tarpon Springs, Florida, just north of Tampa Bay area, plays into all this. Tarpon Springs is the most Greek place outside of Greece. It's the most Greek city in America. Has the highest amount of Greek people, blah, blah, blah. The Greek Orthodox Church makes a visit there once a year. And in this bay, they toss a cross, and the boys aged 16 to 18 go diving in for the cross, and a Greek Orthodox minister tosses it into the lake, and they go and they dive for this. And this lake, Juan Ponce de Leon sailed into because it's connected to the ocean. And he called it the Anclote River, or the Angels River, right? He called it the Espiritu Santo, like the Holy Spirit River. And today it's called the Anclote, which is phonetically the Angelic River, and there's a spring in this place.
Atlantis
Yeah.
Rising asks, so who or what is Allah?
What is Allah?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I'm not Muslim or anything, but it's God, you know. Whoa,
I like
what else?
I like Miguel Sereno has El Aya, so it's he, she in Spanish Arabic, so it's like the dynamic.
My last name is Ayala, so kind of.
So I mean, it's a mirrored word.
spiritual
Allah,
guy
but
down here.
all is comes from El, and El is so all, El, and hell are all the same word. So with Greek culture, you have hell, Hellenistic, Helvetic, hell this, hell that, Helios, right? Heliocentric. So that's hell. That's God too. El is the most ancient word for God. El, that we know of, the most ancient word for God. El. You get Elohim. It's the Phoenician word for God. And this is where you get Elvin. Elvin was a caste, right? So Elvin is Finnish or Phoenician or Vanesian, right? This was the white nobility before it became the black nobility, not racial colors. I'm saying before the mercantile class, which held the secrets of traversing this plane,
Gross mercantile.
usurped the Aryan caste, usurped the Brahmins, the ecclesiastic class, and they made Aryan the worst word that you can say because that was their old title.
Right.
So the
Even though some scientists still say Aryan gases when they refer to noble gases.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
that's good. That's a good one. Where were we? Basically.
Well, I'm sorry, I cut you off in a weird ADHD thing about Allah, but you were about to talk about the historical precedents for throwing a crucifix into the Crescent Bay so that a bunch of Christian Orthodox kids once a year could relive whatever the heck happened at the last reset, right? Or what was the reason that they're throwing a crucifix in the pond?
Well, it's because they know how special that bay is. That bay is called Spring Bayou. That little, it's like a cul-de-sac, but made of water, right? And it comes in from the Gulf of Mexico into Tarpon Springs, Florida. And basically Tarpon Springs, Florida, you know, I always say Tampa Bay was the capital seaport of Atlantis. Well, it was the primary seaport, the central hub. Well, where the royalty lived, and you know, was Tarpon Springs. This was like the VIP club. And you can see this when you see the canals going in there from the air.
And that P and the R again, which we don't know, right? Could be the Cyrillic or the Latin.
Well, think about Tarpon too. Tartarian Springs, Tarpon Springs, you know, the Tar Heels to Moors, right? So Tarpon Springs is people call Tarpons dragons too. Because the way that they roll in the water, they look like sea monsters in the water. So Tarpons, a school of Tarpons, a lot of times what you'd see as old sea monsters in these old like French maps and stuff was actually a school of Tarpons, because the way that they roll together, or even the way that one Tarpon will roll, will make it look like a very long snake-like serpent. If you've ever seen Tarpon roll on top of the water, you'll know what I'm talking about. And so there's your dragon, by the way. But there's your America dragon, possibly a Tarpon. And there's, you know, dragon means a lot of things, of course. Francis Drake was in and around Florida, too.
The Beowulf thing with the dragon. Oh, go ahead, Francis Drake, though, yeah.
Well, Francis Drake, right. He's kind of a founding father, an unofficial founding father of America, you know.
Right.
And what was I? What was we just talking about? The Barbary Wars. I know you've talked about the Barbary Wars. Well, did you know we were just talking about the Muskegee? We're talking about Islam. This fits in perfectly. The Barbary Wars ended, okay, and the U.S. Navy literally went from the north coast of Africa and immediately traveled to Key West, Florida. Okay. And when they got there, they enacted martial law. Okay. and they took over the Florida Keys in the name of defense from piracy. So they were just fighting Berber pirates in North Africa. They win that war, and then they immediately come over to South Florida, and they enact martial war exactly one coast at a time. One front at a time. They won that. They come over to Florida and start fighting the other front. At this exact same time, the Florida Seminole Wars start breaking out. Okay, and Florida becomes a U.S. state in 1821. Well, in Key West, which was under martial law, in 1820, there was not a single permanent resident of the Florida Keys. 1820. Not a single permanent resident, native or European, because they were either killed or driven out. Okay? By 1830, Key West was the richest city in America.
It's all the gold they found, bro. Come on, man.
Highest GDP in America.
Probably found a lot of people's gold. Yeah.
Well, that's what they tell you. It was all just shipwrecking. But how many?
Well, I'm sure they wrecked some ships to get the gold.
How many scoundrels can there be in one city? Wouldn't all the scoundrels kill each other if these were all shipwreckers who were the richest? And these shipwreckers must have been paying their taxes, I guess, right, in order to be the richest.
They're Tartarian tariffs. So here's the thing also. Every video game, you can be a soldier, a scavenger, or a scoundrel. What is a scoundrel again?
Let me tell you. I'll tell you right there. Let me cut you off right there because this is huge. Scorpio. These are Scorpio words. Astrology is everything. You utter astrology and you don't even know it.
Right?
All you viewers out there. These are Scorpio words. Scorpio has a bad reputation. They're backstabbers, and I love Scorpios. I'm part of Scorpio.
Yeah.
But the reputation, the mythological,
don't mess
connotation. With them. Their backs, they rule. So I won't say that. I won't say they. Scorpio rules backstabbing, betrayal, the underworld, grave digging.
I like how you walked back stereotyping all Scorpios. That was pretty cool.
Okay. Well, from the word Scorpio, and they're very competitive, the most competitive athletic sign, Scorpio, okay? You get the words score, scoundrel, scar, scavenger.
Sucio, which is dirty in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Scrape, to scab. Let me look at. I've got those are the ones off the top of my head, but let me look at the list I have.
It's interesting though because it's a legal term they're using while you're doing that. Scoundrel, the fact that they're referring to these Berber princes who have their own sovereign states, essentially. When you go to the Caribbean and you have your own money and you have a treasure island, I'm gonna go ahead and call that a sovereign state. Up until they didn't make a new war, they just continued the war against the Berbers. It's very clear.
North African people. Well, the Seminoles look North African.
Right.
Okay, scare, scar, scandal, to scoot or scooter, to score, to scourge, scorn, scoundrel, scour, scrap, scry, skate, skank, like a whore. That's very Scorpio.
The scrotum
skank.
Too?
To skeet. You guys know what skeeting is.
I learned that from my brother who is a Scorpio, actually, yeah.
To sketch, or if something's sketchy, it's scary, right? Or skunk, if something smells terrible. Right. Or
because skunks are also very.
So all of these words come from Scorpio, and that this is the beauty of phonetics. Okay, this is why each rune had a meaning, because some sounds do have a meaning. How many pleasant words can you think of that start with the word ska? Not very many. Ska is terrible. Ska is the worst type of music.
What? Dang. All right. Well, that's off the table then. Okay.
But this is also the Scottish, the Scythians, the
Scots, yeah,
the Scuti, same people,
It's interesting. The Scots are from Valentine. The Romans called it Valentine, and Valentine's got a whole thing with like the bow and forcing people together and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, so Florida basically has a number of these tribes that are speaking their own languages and they're learning Phoenician, or at least some of their traders are. Or what is this before English?
So the Phoenician does not tie in like overtly to Florida.
Thank you, Jeremy.
There are That's my birthday, 11/23, right there. So thank
It's
you.
a
Guys.
lucky birthday. Good job.
But
Illuminati confirmed.
same day as Miley Cyrus and Snooki. So
It's 2 days after my brother's, and you're still a Scorpio, or you
No,
tipped into Sag or something.
I'm Sagittarius. I'm the first day of Sagittarius.
There you go.
But
I can see that.
very scorpionic. But what were we talking about?
Oh, well, the language is you're saying that the Phoenician thing doesn't really tie into the Confederate civilized tribes necessarily.
Well, if you're going by if you know that Phoenician is Finnish, then yes, the Holy Grail is right here in Florida. Lake Worth, Florida has the highest. Lantana and Lake Worth, Florida, which are pretty much the same city, have the highest concentration of Finnish people outside of Finland. Well, if those are Phoenicians, then yes, you have Phoenicians living here in Florida. The Phoenicians also went by the name the tribe of Dan a lot of the time.
Right.
The
Dan,
Vikings.
Macedonia. Yeah.
The Vikings. Well, here in Florida, you have Dania Beach, which was named for Danish, for a Danish colony. Well, the Danish are the tribe of Dan as well.
And their red flag, like the Cherokee and the Moroccans. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You also have all these Seminole. The Seminoles are the only tribe in America that never officially yielded to the United States. They never officially surrendered. So the government made concessions to them, not the other way around. So they have like some of the most casinos. And do you know where the word casino comes from? The word casino, it has, there's a couple debatable origins. The word casino comes from casina, which is the Seminole practice of taking a communal black psychedelic drink, the black drink. Mm-hmm. And the black drink grows up and down in Florida. And
black currant liquor, right?
All these tribes in America would trade to Florida to get their black drink. Now, the black drink, which is Yopon holly primarily, a lot of different ingredients. Yopon holly, probably some other hollies, Florida hollies, Brazilian pepper tree, maybe even. But
I heard currants.
Well, maybe too, yeah, currants. Basically, you have the most famous name for this drink is Osceola. So Osceola is the most famous Seminole chief. Well, there's one problem. He was never actually a chief, and his name's not actually Osceola. His name was Billy Powell. He was half Scottish.
What?
He was a full-blown Celt. Okay,
you had that picture of him. Do you want to pull that up again? He was wearing a fez that looked like the New Yorker hat, right? That was that guy?
Yeah, I'll pull. No, that wasn't. I don't think that was him. He's wearing a gorget. I have a good picture of him wearing a gorget, though.
So are those? Is the story of him? Is it bullshit or what?
No, it's not bullshit. This was actually the most shameful event they'll even tell you this. If you Google most shameful event in American military history, they will tell you it's one of three things. And one of those three is the capturing of Osceola under a white flag truce. Mm-hmm. They wanted Osceola so bad that they violated a white flag truce. Wow. Where Osceola bravely went out and met with two or three American officers in peace talks. Then they put a gun to his head and said, "You're mine now, bitch. Get ready to go die in a star fort." And they imprisoned him in a star fort.
That was the San Marcos, right? In St. Augustine?
St. Augustine star fort, yeah. And so Osceola, that's where that name comes from. He took the name of that psychedelic brew that you would take. And, the Seminoles were multi-ethnic. So
it's a lot of work to grow my hair out, but I appreciate the idea, Bird.
I get a fro, and I'm not going to be as beautiful as Narco Longo. So.
There's nothing more beautiful than the fro. Don't say that. All right.
No, let's see that Taino Tower.
Yeah, right.
No, dude. No. Never.
I know, like Angela Davis used to keep a gun in her afro. So I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with it. I mean, right. There's something going on with this, though. I mean, the Scots, the Valentine, the connection.
What is that?
Well, I just said Taina Tower. This is the Colt Tower in San Francisco, but it came up with the Tana Tower in San Francisco, right? It does look a little phallic. I think there's some more.
No, because it looks like the Bok Tower in Florida. That's why it looked.
Hey.
Colt Tower, San Francisco. Okay.
Yeah, I typed in Taina. If I type what
It's Taino with an O.
Okay.
Taino. There you go.
Friggin' out of towners that come in here. Okay. This is this the one the guy threw himself off of? It looks so much like the one from that guy who was Bed Bath and Beyond guy or whatever.
Interesting.
No? Interesting. I mean, so you've got this like weird thing going on then. If you've got a bunch of Native American tribes that are so they have indigenous nomadic people that have traveled and maybe have a trading empire, and they've ended up in Scotland, and they've ended up and anywhere that the Gulf Stream takes them, including to Florida. So then they're related. Even if he's from Scotland halfway, it's maybe because they're these were in Brooklyn,
The Seminoles are half North African, half Celtic. And if you know anything about the Moors, well, what are the Moors? The Moors are half North African, half Celtic, or
Portugal in a nutshell. Yeah,
exactly. The Iberian Peninsula was all blonde Irish people until the Moors strolled up officially, right? Well,
strolled.
The Seminoles and the Welsh Indians and all these Welsh people, they were cut off from a pre-existing empire. And when the European colonists start showing up, the ones that were part of this largely, and it's kind of silly to say like our current world paradigm is the bad one and theirs was the good one. Everyone kind of likes to think that way.
It's like to oversimplify. Yeah. Clearly they screwed up enough to lose their entire civilization. Calm down, everybody.
Yeah. So the Welsh, the Irish, the Scottish made up much of the Seminole Indians. So how do you have, and we're told that Seminole means runaway slaves.
Oh, right.
So the runaway slaves, this is their
Moses, runaway slaves. I'm sorry.
Well, this is also their half-assed attempt of explaining how these people look so un-American. Is they say they have to be runaway slaves because they look African, so they must be slaves. Well, they're not the sub-Saharan Africans that were getting pulled into boats. They were North African Islamic people, Moorish people,
right?
That had a refined society in America, right? They were wearing plaid. The Seminoles wore plaid out in the Everglades and stuff. And what's plaid? Plaid is a tartan, right?
Tartan, right? And if you look around Africa, if you go to like any major country in Africa, you'll find tartan plaid. Plaid is very commonly the clothing used by the Zulu, etc.
Who was the king from the last king of Scotland? What was his name? Ibn something. Ibn. I'll
look it up really quickly.
The last king of Scotland was like this African dictator who was obsessed with Scotland and said, because they had like
the film I haven't seen. Yeah, Idi Amin.
Yeah, they had a technical victory over England in like a technicality that wasn't actually a military victory, but with that like technicality, he crowned himself. He's like, I defeated the British, right? And so he said, if I defeated England, then I must be the king of Scotland. And I think I'm probably butchering that story. But
I'm gonna have to watch this.
He crowned himself the king of Scotland. And he said, I'm the rightful king of Scotland. Now, if you know anything about the Scythians and how Princess Scotia went from Egypt to the British Isles, well, this makes a hell of a lot more sense. It could just be he could just be like a cannibalistic dictator that's just losing his mind. But
I mean, Princess Scotia is an interesting aspect, right? The thing that people seem to forget is that Excalibur and King Arthur, all of these stories, Merlin and his Setian magician practices, and of course Queen Scotia coming from Egypt. I mean, this is part of the lore. So unless we're going to completely discount everything that these people have, this is why we have King of Scotland in the first place. They have their stones that they like to crown each other on. I mean, it all comes back to the scone stone, right? Which is Jacob's ladder. He put his head on the pillow that was a stone, and that's the only stone they can use to crown anybody anymore.
Hmm. I was just talking about that today with John Saxer.
Really?
Yeah, he was talking to me about how it's a fake stone. He
Right.
calls it a toilet seat. How it's not. It's not the
Right.
real.
Well, there's
it's
a
like
huge.
Yeah.
There's a conspiracy about it, right? Because in the 70s, someone stole it and they dropped it in the gravel parking lot and supposedly chipped off a piece of it. And then they brought back and put the stone back on, and everyone who was old said this isn't the same stone. So there's a lot of evidence there. Plus the original piece that was broken off of it into the gravel. It's a weird Disney movie kind of story. It's probably so that they could take a piece of it or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. How much do you know about the stone anchors?
I saw a stone anchor in Bermuda. What do you? Not a lot. That's one of the ways that they historically say Bermuda had people there before the Spanish got there. They have a Spanish stone that is a stone anchor.
So if you could add to that search ancient stone anchor, you'll see
Right.
some good examples of what I'm about to show. So these are ancient stone anchors. Now we've been talking about like the Muslim origins of Florida and the Gulf of Mexico and Mecca, the Olmec, right? We were tying that in. Well, now we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the Atlantean connections. How is Florida Atlantis? Well, Atlantis was an ancient maritime culture, supposedly greater than any of the known ancient world. So that would probably mean bigger ships, bigger people, bigger territory, one of the three, if not all of them. Well, stone anchors were used before, right? The cast iron anchors or steel, whatever they use, modern anchors. And essentially up until like 500 years ago, even earlier or more recent than that, this was the normal method of deploying an anchor, was to throw a big rock with a hole in it over the side of the boat. And this was, effective. It's just a crude anchor. And this was done for thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years. And you can tell how rich of a maritime culture a region had based off of how many of these you find in the vicinity, right? And the larger the anchor, the larger the boat, the larger the civilization, the more widespread the civilization.
They're not small. And there's again, so this is what I saw when I was in Bermuda, just like this, had a bunch of runes on it though, not just crosses, runes. And so that's why they were like, they called it Spanish rock, and it says Portuguese rock. And they said, well, it must have Galatian stuff written on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that one has the Templar crosses on it because the Templars showed up there during right around the Crusades, and they said, "Wow, this is where Noah landed." Obviously, and they carved there. They were kind of taking selfies in front of it. That's what those crosses are right there. Well, that stone anchor comes from Georgia. That's that one right there.
Oh,
that
the giant. The giant one I was looking at.
The one on that is on the mountains of Ararat. That is the stone anchor of all stone anchors. That is Noah's very stone anchor, by the way.
Ararat. Wow.
That is on the mountains of Ararat. That is.
And they came through, scraped it off, and then put their little crosses on it.
That is Noah's stone anchor, and the Templars knew that, and they signified that by etching on it. And that is on the mountains of Ararat, where if after a flood you were set afloat from the Gulf of Mexico, you would wash up right into either the Baltic Sea or the mountains of Ararat if the sea levels was 500 feet higher. Okay.
Wow.
Because of the Gulf Stream, you would float right over, and this is where. So what I'm getting at is, and you see they've even made they even made a stone anchor out of that hieroglyphic tablet.
Wow.
What I'm getting at is this: you find today ancient stone anchors, which are a real thing. We're looking at them right now. Ancient stone anchors. You find them primarily in two places: the Mediterranean Sea and Polynesia, Indonesia area. Right, the two most rich maritime cultures of the ancient world. Well, on average, these ones you're looking at in the Mediterranean and the Pacific are on average about 300 to 500 pounds, and they're about the size of a backpack. Okay, that one on Mount Ararat, that one's exceptionally large. That one's at least 8,000 pounds.
That's from when Noah was a giant. I hear you.
Well, if you don't know about these, you're about to have your mind blown. Florida has not only the oldest ancient stone anchors in the world, but the
Really?
largest. Oh, you won't find any pictures. You'll find no pictures.
This is Florida stone anchor. That's one picture. See?
Well, that's a normal size stone anchor. What
Okay.
I'm
They're
about to
giant.
show you.
Okay.
And you
Just
guys mentioned the Henrys. Go ahead.
What I'm about to show you is the Saxor stones, the ancient stone anchors of Atlantis.
Now, I'm not saying Saxor is Scorpio, but it's a little close.
Well, it's Sagittarius, actually. He is a Sagittarius. He's descended from a noble bloodline, John Saxor. And how can you tell that? Because he's a Sagittarius, a Sagittarius, Saxor. And the men in his family down the line probably would have been Sagittariuses, just like how Eeyore Bok, which Bok means goat, was a Capricorn himself, the goat. His father before him was a Capricorn, the goat, and so far back into perpetuity, essentially.
Brittany pointing out Edley Scanlon. Just a shout out to all Floridians who build Egyptian super megaliths. You know, we love you. And
What did I text you the other day, Narco?
What?
She said that the A Book in Every Home by Edward Leedskalnin is a encrypted / code. So I was just texting Narco about that the other day, actually, when we covered the Bok Tower.
It is really an interesting book because Sweet 16 has to do with 16 polarized magnets, virgin magnets, which is why it looks creepy when you read that book. But
it's entirely allegorical. That the whole story that he's reciting to everyone that visits his little place, the Coral Castle. I've been there.
Little place, yeah.
Well, what we're looking at right now is an ancient stone anchor in the water. And this is what they generally look like, about the size of a backpack. And that would be good for about a 30-foot, 20-foot fishing boat, right?
Wow.
A big boat, maybe a couple of them. Now, what I'm about to show you in Florida are the largest stone anchors in the world.
Oh my God.
On average, between 5,000 and 12,000 pounds.
Look at the hole in it. Like the rope must have been huge.
Well, you can see the rope mark in the top left right there, where it's worn down the rock, where the rope has been tied for dozens, if not hundreds of years.
Oh my God.
And these are scattered all across Pinellas and Pasco County of Florida. Well, I was just telling you, Florida is the Holy Land. Pinellas County is the land of Pineal. This is Tampa Bay.
Any pine trees or anything by any chance?
Well, of course, you have pineapples, you have pine trees. Of course, they'll tell you that's where it's from. But Pinellas County, being the Garden of Eden, in multiple people's stories, this is John Saxor. His research led him to Tarpon Springs. He was an Egyptologist before this. Now you thought that one was big. This is an ancient stone anchor of Atlantis.
I want to hang out with this guy. He seems fun.
If you want to hang out with him, go check out my documentary called The Saxor Stones or The Saxor Saga.
The Saxor Stones Saxor Saga. All right. We'll watch that. If you send me a link, I'll put that in the description for everybody, by the way.
So this is the tallest one that we saw.
Dude, it looks like
found.
What am I even? Because is it at some point it stops looking like rock to me. You know what I mean? Like it almost looks like a giant heart stone or one of those Stellium 7 things.
Well, it's got 8,000 plus years of patina on it as well.
Okay.
You can see the light parts are where it either scraped against pavement or in the middle of the hole, the donut. They actually pressure wash these to get the patina off so that people don't know. Because
Everybody calm down. It was 8,000 years ago when the giants were making the boats, you know? Big deal.
You always got to wash the holes.
The giants were bleaching their assholes 10,000 years ago, guys.
Nothing changes.
So, for those who might say for those who say these holes could be natural, some of them could be. These crude holes. Well, limestone does make like Swiss cheese holes sometimes, but
perfect, like a drill.
Exactly. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I agree. These are ancient stone anchors.
I respect that.
This hole right here completely debunks the natural hole theory. That is a perfectly bored hole going through a rock that was underneath water for at least 5,000 years. And the inside of that bored hole has the same patina as the outside of that rock, indicating that hole is thousands of years old. Now,
Equally as old. Yeah.
right here, we call this one the sand dollar. I nicknamed this one the sand dollar. This one has been completely pressure washed. So this one's completely bleached. You can see they kind of gave up to halfway.
Humans.
But you can see the rope marks where this would have been tied on, crossing this rock. Now, the stone anchors we were looking at before, you'll see they have 2 holes in them a lot of times, right? 2
They're having
holes.
fun with those.
And this is how you can confirm it's an ancient stone anchor. How you would use this anchor, you'd throw it over the side, and very often they'd get stuck because you're throwing it into essentially mud, right? Muck at the bottom of the ocean. Well, in order to get these anchors out, they had 2 holes on either side of the anchor, and 2 ropes would be coming from this anchor. And 1 man would get on either side of the boat, and they would pull rock.
Can you show me that? Can you put your hands up to the camera when you do that, Narco? Please?
They would rock the boat side to side.
Yeah.
They would rock the rock.
Because no one had invented the double dildo middle out compression yet, where you can do both in one hand.
Exactly.
Giants. That's forgetting they were giants. We're going.
So these are some typical anchors, and you can see the 2 holes is a dead giveaway. 2 parallel holes in the same rock. That's an ancient stone anchor.
Oh my god!
That's the largest one on the planet, as far as I've seen. They have a couple in India that are about a quarter of this size that are still big, but they do not acknowledge these ones whatsoever in Florida. They do not acknowledge them. There's no scientific study. There was one official that came down there in the 90s and 2000s. He got a lot of attention, John Saxer, attracting people to come look at these rocks. But
wow.
In like the mid 2000s,
Randall Carlson, what are you gonna do? Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Those guys they've got their head in the sand.
They don't know. They're like 10, 20 years behind this is brutal, man.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm just like out with my buddy taking photos of giants anchors, literally like dozens of them. That's a pretty brutal.
I mean, they were close by Florida. They went to the Bimini Road, but they weren't.
Yes.
They could have been contenders. It's true.
Now, we were just looking at giant stone anchors, right? Now, if you're intelligent, you're thinking giant anchor, giant boat. Okay? Where are the giant boats? Well, right next to that anchor you saw on Mount Ararat, there is the outline of a petrified ship.
Mm-hmm.
And many people, not just Tartarian,
right? In the
community,
80s, there were documentaries on that. Yeah.
Many people concede this is not concede. That's not the right word. Contend. What's the word? Contend? Not contend.
What are they trying to do?
They're agreeing.
Concede's fine. I'll take concede.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're agreeing that this location is absolutely where Noah's Ark landed. Some ark, because you have the anchor in, only a couple thousand feet away. You have the boat, the giant boat.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was an excavation in the 80s where they went into the fossilized ark as well, which was interesting. And then some people the reason it got shut down was like, well, this would basically mean that they were giants, and that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a whole other verse in the Bible being true at the same time. We can't
Yes. So now I'm about to show you about the boats. We just covered the anchors. The anchors show that Atlantis was there. But we still need the boats. Well, E. Calloway was a Christian theologian, and lawyer, not from Florida, but moved to Florida. He was contacted. Are you familiar with the man named Dr. Brown Landone, mystic author? Wrote like over 100 mystical works. He was an occult author. Well, Dr. Brown Landone lived in Florida. He cured himself of essentially what was I don't know what he calls it, but like essentially being quadriplegic. He was bedridden,
Hmm.
cured himself. You get the idea. Classic charlatan backstory. Just kidding.
Got
He's
over
a-
his
he's a
smallpox. Yeah.
Very cool guy. And he
Or polio.
he instructed this man, E. Calloway. He initiated him into what was called the Order of Melchizedek. And the Order of Melchizedek used a codex that used the numbers 1, 4, and 7. And using these numbers, you could test the validity of any theory or any sentence. You could test the validity of any sentence by reducing it to a certain numerical value. So this is kind of like entering Kabbalistic territory.
Yeah, John D. and Bacon again. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's coming back to Atlantis too. So in the beginning, that's E. Calloway. And he is the man who located the wood that was used for Noah's Ark, which can only come from one place in the world. That is Northwest Florida, near Tallahassee, called Bristol, Florida. And in that area, which is the Apalachicola River Valley, that is the apple of Eden. The Appalachians are the apple of Eden. Okay, and this is where paradise was. And in the Garden of Eden, the west coast of Florida, you have gopher wood, the only place in the world where gopher wood can be grown. Well, in the Bible, it explicitly says the ark was made of gopher wood. And in Hebrew, it's kopher wood. Well, that's the same wood as far as I'm concerned.
The Freemasons talk about the secret G for a reason. Yeah.
It's one of the lightest woods in the world. Okay, or most buoyant, however you want to say that. So it floats. It floats better than any wood.
It beats balsa, right?
And it does. And E. Calloway was enamored with the properties of this wood. Of the 28 trees listed in the Garden of Eden, 27 of them are found to be native in the Apalachicola River area of Northwest Florida.
Wow.
And the four-headed river system of Eden, there's only one four-headed river system in the world that has 4 equal river heads. And I will show them to you. They are in the Seminole Lake, Florida, which is on the exact line, Florida-Georgia line. Shout out, guys. Yeehaw. Florida-Georgia line, exact Lake Seminole. You have the world's only four-headed river system. And E. Calloway, I'm pulling it up. That's why I'm talking in circles.
And I got something to tie it all in here towards.
Also, Order Melchizedek, right? Because the Aaronic priesthood, and then Melchizedek's the only ones allowed to collect taxes, right? So it's to be part of the Order of Melchizedek, you can actually force people to pay taxes, and you're above them in their sovereignty.
And okay, so this is E. Calloway.
Oh, going straight up, waking up with analog style here.
Oh yeah,
he has an aesthetic. You know what I mean?
That's analog. Anytime you see red text,
it's like a Shepherd Fairy. I can tell immediately. It's a Van Gogh.
These are analogs. I wasn't trying to show you guys those, but we can look at them. Ancient Tallahassee, like Rome, sits upon several, if not 7 hills. 7 hills. Do you know this occult significance of 7 hills?
I mean, there's 7 days a week, and the 7. Yeah, well, keep going, but is that to do the alchemical and the gods underneath you, right? Because the 7 hills, or what do you want to go with?
Well, it's all of them. It's the Pleiades that we were just looking at, too,
right?
The 7 hills.
Yeah.
But her capital, surrounded by majestic oaks. Remember, the Druids had oaks, and Florida has older oaks than anywhere in Europe. Take that to the fucking bank. Her capital, surrounded by majestic oaks, which give way here and there to groups of shrubbery and flowering porcheries, I don't know how to say that, boasts a Parthenic portico. It is the center of an aggregation of villas, lovely homes enshrined in blooming grounds, blah, 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 blah. It was here that Achille Murat found a home in his exile when the blazing meteor of the Napoleonic dynasty had run its course. Remember, the Louisiana Purchase coincided with Napoleon's, was it his defeat? Am I getting that mixed up?
His defeat, but also with the winning of his brother in Spain. A lot of things happened.
Okay.
1812 is the Napoleon invasion of Moscow, which didn't go too well, but it did.
But what we're seeing right here is that the Napoleonic dynasty had run its course. So why is he saying that in like an American context, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here his bones rest, and the pilgrim to his tomb meditates on the mutability of individual and dynastic glory. Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, how few there are of us. Do their shades ever meet and ruminate? So how did we go?
He says his name is Akili Murat. Murat is a Turkish word, right? It's Arabic, Turkish. Murat means like desire or something, like Kampf.
Yeah, so he was exiled to Tallahassee.
Interesting.
After I assuming, well, there's so many rabbit holes. I don't know which one to choose. But let's just look at this.
Yeah. We'll do it again.
The original Garden of Eden, the Pison, so the 4 rivers of Eden, which people are going to jump to say they're allegorical, and no doubt there's an allegorical interpretation to these, the 4 elements, the 4 cardinal directions, so on. The Pison River is the Chattahoochee. The Hiddekel is the Fish Pond Creek River. The Euphrates is the Spring Creek River, and the Guinon, the Flint River.
The Murat River is on the Euphrates. There's actually a Murat River there.
Oh, wow. And Georgia, we're just talking about Turkey. Well, Georgia's right next to Russia, too. And there's a Georgia right next to Florida. And one of Florida's biggest cities is St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, Russia, is essentially Tampa Bay. It's same bay, different cities. Tampa, St. Petersburg. And that Tampa Bay hotel is actually Turkish Moorish architecture. The architecture in Tampa.
Right. We saw some of those Alibaba towers, right?
Those were them. Those were the Turkish towers of Tampa Bay. And I'm going to show you another little map that my assistant, soon to be producer, if he gets promoted, he'll know what I mean by that. Basically, my assistant sent me this map, and this map is allegedly a satirical what-if scenario on whether if America never entered World War I and the Allies lost World War I, and the Central Powers were victorious, how they would divvy up America. Okay.
Right. And the grasshopper. Go ahead. Dick.
This was printed by Life magazine. Okay. And I got to pull it up. I don't know where.
While you're pulling it up, so there's that book, the Man in High Castle, and in Man in High Castle, Philip K. Dick, they're talking about a book called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, which is talking about another scenario where things didn't happen the way they did in that world; they happened this way, right? But in that, they have Haponifornia, and so the Japanese took over California, and then the Prussians got most of the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, so that's
Dick. Yeah,
that's probably what they were drawing from when they,
or vice versa. I think it might have been Philip K. Dick was because I think his money came afterwards.
You're see, I don't know enough to make a call on that. I actually just found out about this map today too. It knocked my socks off.
I think you're talking about this map, right? The Barbarians of Canada.
Okay,
Prussia
you got it.
Here.
You got
New
it right
Prussia
there.
Here, American Reservation, Haponica, New Kobe. I want to live in New Kobe, kind of, but I love San Cisco because that's where I belong.
Think about how interesting this is. They distinctly gave Florida.
What's Florida called?
Turkey. It's the new Ottoman Empire.
That's right. Oh, the Murat River and Baghdad corners of Turconia. Weird. Constantinople junctions where Clearwater is. Weird. Sorry.
Isn't that strange?
Constantinople Junction is the most important place to the biggest occults of Florida.
Yes, exactly. And that's Tampa Bay, Constantinople.
I mean, the Jesuits sure love Constantinople. I don't know.
Scientology there right now.
Well, Tampa looks like Constantinople. It looks like it. let's look at a picture of Tampa Bay Hotel. I mean, it's Turkish architecture. It even tells you right there in the could you search Tampa Bay Hotel, please?
Doing it. There we go.
Yeah, it'll
Loading. Oh, it's so beautiful. It almost makes up for being stolen.
If you just search 1900, like Tampa Bay Hotel 1900, you'll see some really good ones.
There you go.
Are you kidding me?
Some of them, it's even like completely overgrown with like vines, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is 5 years old."
Yeah, relax.
A 5-year-old building. God. Henry Plant, and people were screaming at us yesterday. Plantagenet, Henry Plant. We didn't make that connection in the whole video, but of course you could. Henry Plantagenet, however you want to say it.
And they have the little steam tower.
Right, that's an Edison steam dynamo.
There's the tower. You see the tower on the right-hand side there in the article, the one I was telling you about last night?
Yes, the smokestack. It's a steam-powered electronic. The Tampa Bay Hotel, that hotel was the first hotel in America where every single room had electricity.
And telephone lines.
Edison designed the electric system. Okay? Not only that, this hotel was the headquarters and port of embarkation for the Spanish-American War, where they were taking over who? Cuba, the Cubans, the runaway Seminoles again, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's amazing when you look at these pictures of, they want me to buy it. I mean, just the idea. Okay. Also New Hamburg, right? So we were talking before, David Ewan Jr., about the idea of the Alemannia, like the idea of these Turkish and Vienna and the Viennese war, that there's a lot of Turks in old Prussia as well, and our confusion about what Turks are, because you've got, janissaries all over Europe from when the Turks were in charge.
And think about this, the keys of Florida. This guy, whoever made this map, is a genius. Because even if they're just going off of pure imagination, they're picking up on such good phonetics, you have no idea. What are the keys of Florida? Well, maybe they are turkeys. Look at that right there. Wow. Key West is West Turkey.
Turkey.
And hate, they're saying the Gulf of Hate, like, oh, this is our enemy taking us over. Well, hate is Hades. Haiti is Hades. Haiti is the underworld underneath of paradise. If Florida is paradise, then Haiti is the underworld beneath it, Hades.
Check out the book I'm reading right now, Narco. Now that you bring that up, it's called Maps of the Imagination. The writer is cartographer. So nice. It talks about how it, when they're creating maps, they're creating other worlds, and you're saying that he was very creative with what he named everything. And I think it's part of a bigger scheme. And I tie it all in together because we were talking about John Dee earlier. We were talking about Francis Bacon. You have John Dee with the Enochian keys. John Dee's connection with Crystal Ball Columbus. You have Juan Ponce de Leon looking for the Fountain of Youth. And you have all the Henrys. There's over 13 Henrys I've counted so far. And Henry means that one who rules in a line. Well, a king rules, right? And they're also robber barons, so they were building railways. Well, what if in Atlantean times the king, so a Henry, he was an alchemical catalyst of the people. He was the life force of the people. What if this was how Francis Bacon was writing? Because we were talking about the origination of the English language and all that stuff. What if Florida is the new Atlantis? Not only the original one, but they were trying to revive it through an alchemical means, putting all these Henrys in it to try and bring it back to life to its original form, and taking over all these structures and all these things that were already here, and wiping out the people in the process to, again, eliminate his story and make it and shape it into their own. And alchemy also affects time. That's what all people have to understand. Not only is it a transmutation of base metals into gold, but it's also a transformation of the alchemist, and it's also a transformation of time itself. And we're talking about the golden age, the gilded age, whatever it was that they were doing all this shit. So I think it's all connected.
It is all connected.
We're deep. We're 2 hours deep. There's 666 people watching, which is
Illuminati confirmed.
What the fuck y'all got?
Thank you. You said it. And I kind of want to ask a last question, kind of close up some things. We got to definitely do this again, Dr. Longo. Dr. Longo. This is
For
great.
Sure. Herr Doctor.
My question being, so it looks to me like there's a scenario where either people who were in their former lands ended up in Florida because it was the ancient place where things happen, and they're trying to hold on to the past, or it's been this thing that was going on. There's always triangular trade to Florida is forever, and then all of a sudden some other people stole it, and is that what's going on? What's going on with the reset? Like, did they lose it? Is it secretly in the hands of a few that are holding on for the? What's happening?
Or is it a psyop?
Or is it? Thank you.
You're muted. See, it's a psyop. They muted him.
Dude, they don't want him to speak. Yeah, this is the best part. That was on purpose, right? Genius.
Yeah. So you've got a couple resets, right? You've got the big daddy of resets, which would be the most recent ice age.
Saturn reset? Yeah, okay.
15 to 10,000 years ago would be that, kind of generally, unanimously accepted.
The Randall Carlsonian reset. Okay.
Ice age. Well, that is where you have your Atlantis kind of popping up. The modern incarnation, the Bach saga incarnation, where it's people, they're re-implementing an old system. And this old system is many, many, many ages old. So old that you'd probably start looking forward in time for its origin rather than
Mayan back tunes. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Well, okay.
So that system had always been in place. The Atlantis system was a reaction to the ice, the alt land ice. All the land is ice, right? And the paradise was para da is before the ice, right? So I'm drawing from the Bach saga, right?
And Bach, because paradise does mean garden, and paradiser means gardener. Also,
Bach garden.
Yeah, and Persian paradiser means emperor, and paradise means empire. But there again, it's because the emperor is gardening his garden of people.
Yes.
Good old Bach.
So, that reset, the oldest burial in Florida, like I said earlier, is has European DNA and strawberry blonde hair, and they're bog bodies, like Bach bog body. We've made that connection on other shows.
Mills, right? Yeah.
But basically, so you have that. If you want to check mark each of these periods, check. You have old Atlanteans, transatlantic people from way before Columbian times, way before even the natives knew of when Columbus got here. So these guys were long gone when that even came around. Well, then you have about the 500 years ago reset, which is the age of the age of discovery, right? And there was a lot of resetting being done there. The Spanish there's probably no more clear villain in like the historical narrative than the Spanish
the Aragonians. Okay, there's like six different states.
Sorry.
As a Spaniard,
Spanish.
That's not my fault.
The period of Spanish naval dominance.
And the burning of all the books during the Inquisition, so that they could act like that makes sense. That we're reading backwards Arabic. Great.
So it was ugly, right? But you have that timeline with the Spanish and the French doing their early discovery. Then you have the 1812, 1850s Civil War period reset, where you have the Muslim Confederacy. That's exactly what it was. The southern United States were confederated under the Muslim flag, and I just showed you guys that with,
pretty clearly.
And they were fighting not people who were anti-slave, but people that were Moorish, essentially. And that's why you have Seminoles taking in runaway slaves. Meanwhile, they actually own slaves. So how is it that they're taking runaway slaves and are slave owners? One of the largest, if not the largest, plantation in Florida history was ran by a black African queen from Africa who married a white man. They'll say that she was purchased. Nonetheless, when the guy was out of the picture, that African queen ran that plantation until she died.
And dowries are pretty common parts of marriage. And not all the slaves that she owned were black. There were indentured servants, and there were Slavs and Irish, etc.
Right. So that was Kingsley Plantation, by the way. If you guys want to look up Kingsley Plantation, we're probably running out of time here in a little bit, but
Yeah, we can do that though. It's worth it. Kingsley Plantation. I remember. I think I went to Kingsley Plantation. There was like a celebration or some sort of a festival when I was there, in like 2003.
So if you go back to this Google search bar, well, the slave house, the master's house, is actually a star fort, a four-sided bastion house with a bastion in each corner. But it's made of wood, so I'm not going to call it a star fort, but it's that shape. But what's interesting is the slave quarters, Kingsley Plantation slave quarters, or that. See the ring?
The
Yeah.
star fort. Yeah. Okay.
The semi-ring. See the ring?
Yeah.
Those are the slave quarters. It's a perfect ring or half semicircle that used to be a full ring. And those buildings are solid kakina.
What?
So that rock is essentially what the pyramids are made out of, clumped up shell.
That's
And
pretty amazing.
So those slave quarters are more durable than the master's quarters and would certainly survive a storm, while the master's quarters maybe not so much.
Wow.
And this was made in a semicircle. Blah, 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 blah. We'll dive deeper into that maybe another time. But Kingsley Plantation, maybe for a king.
Oh my God, Dr. Longo. Juan, we're going to have to do this again. Let me pull up where they can find some of your stuff. In the meantime, also, guys, I know some of you are watching this on Old World Florida. This is brilliant that we're doing a swap cast. Juan, next time, let's make sure we're streaming on yours as well. We'll get that set up. Make sure you liked and subscribed and you click on the all button of the bell. Make sure that black bell turns into a white bell. I don't know, it's a kind of Thule thing, but if you get the all notifications, you'll watch all these videos. And make sure you know to go to the lives, because videos and lives are now different. But is there any other place you want me to make sure I go to show them your content?
No, that's it. That's it, really. They know where to find me.
I'm doing it anyway. Go to the Patreon. Give him money. All right.
Yeah, become a sugar daddy.
Buy his T-shirts. Be cool about it. Okay.
Buy my mediocre Singaporean mass-produced merch that I've never seen in my life.
Limited edition, super cool stuff. All right, I'll help you with your merch game. Don't worry.
He shows you other holes on his Patreon too, if you know what I mean. So you become a sugar daddy, not just the anchor holes, but other ones
Homunculus OnlyFans. All right. Okay, but here's also one-on-one podcast. He's smart. He's funny. He's handsome. They love him. This is also where you can get his lives. Make sure you subscribed and you've clicked on the bell. Make sure you go to videos. Is your website not the same now? What do I do?
Yeah, it's the same. The one-on-one-podcast.com. You can find me on there.
Oh, that's right. It's the one-on-one.
Yeah,
podcast.
Because I'm the Juan. That's why.
Yeah, it's not one. It's the one. Yeah, make sure you buy his book, Occultist Mundi Journal. Pretty sweet. I don't know if you still have physical copies. Have you sold out yet? Guys, you better hurry on that. Copies. You better hurry up because they're in hot demand. All right. And then, of course, you go to tartarnova.com and you can buy some of my stuff. I appreciate you all. Go to the Discord, click on the Discord, join the thing. If you have any more questions you want to make sure that Dr. Longo and Juan answer, we're down to do another episode and talk about all these things some more. I'm super glad that you came. This has been great. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, awesome.
Any parting words of wisdom for us all, or some advice?
Yeah, some people in the chat were talking about how much Longo looks into the state of Florida. Well, I encourage everybody, wherever they are at, to look into the history around their area, around their states, and you will be surprised as to what you find. I was delightfully surprised as well when I first started looking into it, and it's thanks to homie Romy from Rising from the Ashes, because he's the one that went to Flagler Hotel or college somewhere in St. Augustine. He was blown away, and I was ignoring it the whole time until I started looking into it. And then from my research, doing constant research, I came across Narco Longo. Then we teamed up. We've hung out. He's awesome. I love him. And here we are. So yeah, I encourage everybody to check out their area. You might be sitting on a gold mine of some sorts.
We're going to get you on with Dane to talk about the Maristas in Puerto Rico, because I can see a lot all of a sudden with Cuba, Haiti, Puerto Rico, these connections all of a sudden to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Caribbean. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and Juan Ponce de Leon was a homunculus, so that's all I can say.
I wanted to close on that, touch on that in closing. I can handle that criticism, people saying, like it's a very narcissistic approach to Florida. But You know what I believe? I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the duty of every people, every place, every group, culture, religion, to make the argument that they are the best, they are the correct, they are the original, they are the only. Else, why? Else, or else, what would be the point of even having an identity, a cultural, ethnic, geographical location, if you did not believe it to be the proper one, the original, the correct, the best, the sacred? So,
there also seems like there's a lot of, so a couple of things there. Like you just said, you're looking into a place that you live in. I think that's huge, because if you're reading a book, you're not necessarily going to see the stuff as clearly as if you're there and you're in person with people going around and looking at the actual rocks. How am I supposed to research stone anchors and find out anything on a Wikipedia page the way you're going to do it in real life? The other thing is, I think you can still think that, for instance, with Tartaria, we're all kind of part of this idea of the best way that we can be. It's a choice. It's a community. It has a lot more to do with the way you function, the words you're using, the way you're thinking about the words you're using. These are, there's blood, and then there's also culture. And culture is this thing, like you said, Phoenician, that can be transmitted and become part of the mind, and it wet wires the brain and helps us evolve. So it's true. There's an objective better, but it's something that we can all be a part of. And I think that's also amazing.
Somebody said that Florida has the nicest criminals in the chat. Made me laugh. Yeah,
is that a cop? Is that one of the cops that said that? All right, guys, I love you very much. I got to do a show with Waking with Ben. Analog's about to do a show with me right after this. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to make this work, but it's going to be amazing. I'm going to take the stuff that we didn't. You're welcome to join. Crypto Alchemist is going to be there. I'm just saying, but I love you guys. We'll do it soon.
Bye.
Look at my LA smile.
The world is very different now. For man holds in his mortal hand the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
It begins a very special time of the year for us. It's the time of peace and reflection. One thing we should all be thankful for is that we live in America, where we have the freedom to change things and the opportunity to grow.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.